Hi, I'm Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Mike, and welcome aboard to our brand new podcast called Taking Off with Mike and Jen.
In this podcast, we will be diving in and unpacking all the baggage, anything from communication to finances, family dynamics, expectations, and what it looks like to fight or flight.
We have 32 years of marriage and a lot of Christian counseling under our belts, so no matter where you find yourself, whether that's being single, dating, engaged, or married, this podcast is just for you.
Are you ready to take your relationships to new heights?
If so, sit back, relax. We have been cleared for takeoff. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to flight number 8. For you frequent flyers, oh, hi.
Honey.
Welcome back. So we're going to talk about a question that was brought to our attention from one of you out there on this flight, and it's a good one. It is definitely a good one. So Jennifer, tell them what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, so here's the question. What were your first months of marriage like, and what advice would you give to newlyweds?
First month of marriage. So just as a recap, for those of you who haven't listened to Flight 1 or 2, maybe even parts of 3, if you want to hear what our first month was like, it was a doozy, so go back and listen to those particular flights. Why don't you start us off and kind of talk about what you would do these days if we were to do it again?
Well, but he is right. Listen to Flight 1 and 2, but to just give a little recap, we started out pretty volatile. Like, I wanted to divorce him after 2 days of marriage. And I mean that literally, seriously. So majority of you out there hopefully listening, you're not in the same boat. You're in la la land and lovey-dovey and can't wait to get married and dive into newlywed life. So just as a recap, we aren't probably the majority, but we could still speak to, obviously, newlywed living, right?
Absolutely. The first thing I would say is you need to have your grace meter on about 1,000%, because
just infinity. Just keep it
when you go from the fantasy of the wedding is over, you just went on this great honeymoon, hopefully, and now you are living together for the first time under the same roof, and everything is going to bubble up. And I mean, you name it, any and every bit of baggage that you ever had about anything, any particular way that you like to do things, see things, your spouse quite possibly could be on the complete opposite end of that. Not with maybe everything, but it's going to bubble up and it's going to happen. And keep in mind, this is going to happen throughout your entire marriage and relationship as well. Because just when you think you have it mastered, then you're going to introduce something else. It might be a job change. That's going to introduce something else. It might be a location house change. It might be you have your first child. Whatever it is, you are absolutely going to see things differently in many, many cases. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So go ahead.
Well, there's so much advice and so much I can say about this. Obviously, it's easier with little details of day-to-day life. But when other people who have already been married tell you don't sweat the small stuff, take that truly to heart. Because once the la-la, foo-foo, gaga stuff wears off, and it will, because that's just very natural, because love is definitely, it's a decision. It's the lust and all that is a feeling. But loving someone for who they really are, the ugly, the good, the yuck, that's a choice. That's a choice to then stay with that person and love them when they're ugly. That's true love right there.
When you don't feel it.
Yeah, definitely when you don't feel it. And that will wear off. But, in the beginning stages, I'm just kind of reminded of little things like I like to go to bed with the kitchen completely clean. I like to wake up the next morning and have it be a fresh slate. That makes me it gives me calm. And Michael's not a messy guy, but he doesn't care if there's dishes piled up in the sink because he'll get to it in the morning. And so, you have to navigate those kind of things. And how do you navigate them? And everything's about communication. Everything's about talking. I remember one of the little things, and this is going to sound super trivial, but it was kind of funny. I never said anything to him when we first got married, but he would have the toilet paper on the roll where the toilet paper comes from underneath. And I couldn't stand that because, like, at night I couldn't find it. Like, it was always underneath, and you don't turn the lights on. So I would just flip it so that the roll would be on the top. And I would notice he'd flip it back. I'd flip it back. It just kind of went back and forth like this until I think I said, honey, can we just do the toilet paper this way? It's neither here nor there, but it makes it easier for me. And if you don't care, blah, blah, blah. And as time went on.
Don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah, don't sweat the small stuff. He's like, I don't care, whatever you want to do. It was habit for him to undo it that way. Whereas for me, it kind of just gave me a little bit of peace. So that was kind of a funny thing too.
Let's talk on the dishes for a sec.
Okay.
So I want to get into that just a teeny bit. Let's just say that I was raised in a family where the dishes had to be put away.
Yep.
Before dinner. And then I go out on my own. I head to college. I don't want to put my dishes away.
That's right, because we usually do the opposite of what.
So for 4 years, exactly, this is what we talk about baggage. For 4 years, now I'm going to do it the way that I want to do it. I'll clean the dishes tomorrow. I'm not going to do them tonight. So then you marry someone that is most likely what you saw growing up. That's another thing we haven't really talked about yet in these flights, but you, in most cases, will marry someone that has some attributes like your father or your mother.
Mm-hmm. Whoever you were
You
raised
might,
with,
in some regards, marry someone that has complete opposite attributes, but in other regards, there's going to be very, very similar. It's something that we pay attention to, and we see it over and over again. So back to for 4 years while I was in college, I packed my dishes on the, all the way to the top. And now I marry this woman, and she wants it right like, guess who? My mommy. And it makes me crazy because I don't want to do it. So there you have this friction already on day one. And what is the intention? She maybe was raised the opposite of me. Maybe she always hated how her mom would never clean the dishes, and they were piled high. So when she lived the way that she lived, it was that way. There's a perfect example of something that is so small, but it has to be addressed, right? It's like you have to talk to your spouse. How do we deal with this? This is the way I feel. This is the way you feel. What is the right thing to do here? What is the right thing to do?
Right. Well,
what is the right thing to do?
You have to be very open with communication. You really have to talk to each other, even about these things, because if you don't, it will build and it will build and it will build. And then a couple years down the road, maybe sooner, you're going to flip out on each other over something that doesn't even have to do with what you're flipping out about. It has to do with something else that he or she has been annoying you with for months, if not years, days, whatever it is. And so when you sit there and go, oh, okay, not a big deal, if it starts to kind of wear on you, then that's something where when everyone's been fed and they've slept well, you talk to your person at dinner one night and say, I know this is going to sound dumb, but I want to talk about the whole dishes thing. And that other person might not even know what the heck you're talking about. Like, that came from left field. So the big thing is open communication and compromise, huge compromises on both of your differences. Because even though you've fallen in love, you've gotten married, you're living together, you're bringing two separate, entirely different people and personalities into one room. So when you're dating, you think it's all going to be great and perfect because you've been dating, you spend every day and every night together and you get along great. So the transition of living together should be a piece of cake, is what you think. And it is not. It is very different. Sometimes the transition is easier and it's not a big deal, but things will start to show up. what side of the bed do you like to sleep on? Little things
And
that
as
really
you know,
don't matter.
they'll turn into arguments.
They just can. They really can if you're not careful.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
The main thing is if you really, if you want to put your spouse first, which would be what would be the right thing to do.
That'd be ideal.
But you get tired of it, right? Why do they always get to be first? Why do we always have to have it be their way? The bottom line is, if that would be the golden rule, right? Treat others how you want to be treated. I want to be first. I want everything to go my way. So the golden rule would be treat your spouse that way. But that's not the reality sometimes of life. And so you do have to have the communication, like Jennifer says. You have to sit down and say, okay, let's talk about this dumb subject, which is dishes. This is how I feel about them. This is how you feel about them. Why do I feel this way? Why do you feel this way? And you will come to an agreement on exactly what that is, but not unless you get into the weeds and you understand why you feel a certain way. Understanding why you feel a certain way is getting to that baggage on this is really the root of the issue, on why the dishes are such a big deal. And it may not be dishes. It could be, as she said, it could be which side of the bed you sleep on. It could be the toilet paper deal. It could be where the dishes are put into the cabinets.
Do you put your clothes away? Do you leave them on the floor? Do you, there's it goes just daily living, guys. It's all about daily living. But one of the biggest things also besides communication, and this is huge, whether you think you're doing this or not, you subconsciously are. And that is expectations. You get married, you have a definite expectation of what you think your now newlywed and new married life should be. You expect it to be like it's been usually during the whole dating stage. You just do. Everything's great and fun dating, and you're on dates, and everything's lovey-dovey, and he's opening the door for you, he's caring for you, he puts you first. And then you get married and it's just life. You got family involved, you have work. The expectation that you put on your spouse is going to cause a lot of problems.
Oh, yeah. I mean, expectations in our relationship when we were growing up,
We did grow up together.
We did grow up together. I felt like I could not ever meet the expectations that she was leading me to or wanting me to achieve. And if you don't feel like you ever meet up to somebody's expectation, then you start giving up. And I can tell you that she definitely had expectations of me, but I also came with baggage myself that if I didn't do the dishes or put the dishes in right into my dishwasher, I knew that my mom was going to come in behind me and redo them. And so there was an expectation that I knew I couldn't do it right. And then here comes my wife, and if she has these expectations and brings up something to do with dishes, it rubs me wrong. It goes into a wound that I have because, in essence, there's that part of me inside that's saying, you're not enough. You're not doing it right. You're not enough. You don't meet the standard. And that's for something as small as not putting dishes in correctly as a kid that you carry all the way to your 50s that still is like, okay, I have to deal with this. I'm enough. It's just dishes. What's the big deal if she wants it to go this way? It has nothing to do with my abilities, but this is the way you hear it when you're a child, that it's not enough. And if maybe the explanation was, hey, this is how we do the dishes. We have to put them this way so that the water will hit them and all the junk will get off so that they'll be clean. It's not that what you're doing is, a negative thing. It's just there's a way to do it that will make it better so the family doesn't eat spaghetti tomorrow that was on the plate yesterday, type of a deal. And then you can understand as a kid, okay, I kind of get that. I understand. And again, it goes back to the explanation of a parent taking the time to explain to their kids, this is why I want it done this way. Here's the reasons. It can make sense instead of, you're doing it wrong, I'll do it. How many times have you heard somebody say that either to yourself or somebody. You're doing it wrong. I'll do it. That just says you're not enough. You're not enough. You're not enough. Carry it forward 20 years, you get married to your spouse, and it's some dumb little thing like dishes or
Whatever.
how you fold the towels. I'm not enough. I'm not enough. I'm not enough. And so now my spouse thinks I'm not enough. Now the devil's going to start playing with your mind. And that's exactly how this stupid pattern goes.
I think as a newlywed, I think a big thing is, to keep those, keep the things in check that were probable, possible issues in your family. A lot of times you're going to see yourselves do things that either reflect, like Michael said, how you were raised and what your parents did. And so you want to live opposite that, or you want to live like that, or take little pieces of it. But as a newlywed, enjoy this stage. Enjoy still going out and dating. Get on compromises of, how do we like the house? Talk about those things. How do you like the house clean? How do you like to do the dishes? Do you want to go out socially weekly, or do we want to spend more time together? Try and start doing things early on in your marriage that you kind of want to be a pattern your whole life. Still go on dates. And both of you can now, plan a date. They don't have to cost a lot of money, but it's just spending that time alone and talking about what you see your future as, planning, things like that. And also to try to tell yourself every morning when you wake up, I'm going to outserve my spouse. I'm going to outserve my spouse. And when you try to think of that, doing for the other person more than yourself first thing in the morning every day, that also sets a precedent for unselfishness, because that selfishness will creep in no matter what. It just does. And so it's kind of just a good reminder to kind of keep yourself in check, on a daily basis, if you can do that. I think that would be a huge thing.
And
too.
something that helps me for sure is, as you know, we're scripture readers, so we're going to read the Bible. The more time that I spend, or if I start my day reading scripture, reading the Bible, studying the Bible, whatever it might be, a daily bread, whatever it might be, if I start my day is going to go way, way better. I'm going to be more of a service attitude to my spouse, and I'm going to treat her like Christ would treat the church. And if I stay away from the Bible and I put it on the back burner, I can absolutely tell, my day just went sucky. I just went bad. And I would look back and I say, I didn't even spend any time with the Lord today. No wonder. And so it just rights me. It rights the ship, per se, in that it really gets me on the track that I need to get on, so that I even have a chance to do the right thing with my spouse, or to raise my kids, or to treat my coworkers appropriately and kindly, and so forth, so on. That absolutely helps me, is just get started in your day, on that path.
Yeah, and we don't know, obviously for some of you that did premarital counseling, some of you didn't. We have found in our experience that a lot of premarital counseling is valuable, but they don't really dig deep enough into moving forward of what marriage really looks like. And I just think there's probably not enough time for that. They'd have to premarital counsel you for probably a good solid year and really get into the weeds of things. So if you didn't go deep, that's something we also recommend as a newlywed. Find a mentor. If you're not in counseling already, just to kind of do tune-ups once a month or whatever it is, find a couple that you guys respect. You look at their marriage and you're like, well, that seems like they got it pretty together. It's not perfect, but it's pretty together. And pray about it, and then approach them and ask them and just say, would you be our mentors? Would you just kind of walk through some of this newlywed life with us, married life, things that come up they can speak to? It doesn't take a lot of time, and it's very, very, very valuable to do that.
Absolutely. The most valuable thing you can do is to have a mentor. The mentors are free, right? So counseling is not free. That's going to probably cost you some money unless you're lucky. But the mentors are free, and the mentors have been through what you're going through.
Yes.
And they are going to have the answers for you that you're really looking for to take you down that path that is going to save you so much time and stress and sweat in your marriage, that if you just lay it on the table and say, this is what's going on, as dumb as this sounds, I have a dishes problem. Or as dumb as it sounds, he's on his Xbox for 3 hours a day. You need to talk about these things and try to understand exactly, why is it affecting me that way? Why is he on his Xbox this long? Whatever it might be. I'm just bringing the current day examples. Social media. I mean, the list goes on what and where there's friction. And so that's what we're talking about as far as having a mentor, is just lay it right in front of them and start working through that stuff. You
all
have
these
to work
things
through
are wedges. They're all wedges.
They
all
are
the
wedges.
outside forces are little wedges that will come between you and your spouse. And also be prepared when you do find a mentor to be open-minded, because they may tell you things that you don't want to hear. Like even things we may say on our flights, they're not going to be what you want to hear.
Nope.
But they're real. I mean, we've been married 32 years, dated a year prior to that. So are we perfect? No. Are we experts? No. But we have some wisdom just because of what we've been through.
And it's worked for us.
And we want to try and save you some of the fights, and all those things that get in the way. Another thing, and I'll be honest with you on this, or we will, when you're also newlyweds and you get in little tiffs, definitely the whole adage of don't go to bed mad, you've heard people say that in movies, they say it. It's way harder to do than you think, way harder. And that is something that he and that was just a tough one for us, wasn't it? Or, we don't really fight like that anymore, but.
Oh, we went to bed mad.
Yeah.
I've lost
so much.
I can't even speak. That's how much.
So much.
I mean, and here's the problem with it.
It's so bad.
You go to bed mad, and it's almost like putting glue on top of something. It's going to harden, and then it's that much harder to get into the next day.
Yes.
And then you do it for 2 days in a row, and it's another layer of glue. And the pride sets in, and it gets harder and harder to break open that and get to what you're talking about. So I wouldn't say what we would do today, what we would recommend today is just say, look, I love you. I'm extremely angry. I can't talk about this.
I'm not leaving you.
I'm not leaving you. I'm not abandoning you. Let's talk about this when our minds are better. But I love you. Good night. And that way you're not putting glue on. You're saying, I love you. I'm committed to you. I'm still totally angry and jacked up, but we will discuss this. We will get through this.
And
it's
always
just
give
now
a
is
time
not a
frame.
good time. And of course, nighttime, it's the end of your day anyway. You're tired. You shouldn't. Yeah, give a time frame. We'll talk about this tomorrow. We'll talk about it the next day, whatever it happens to be. You may go to bed mad, but you're going to still go to bed with that. All right, I'm committed to you. I love you. Let's talk about this later.
Right. For us, we went to I don't know even know if Michael too much as myself, I would go to very dark places, My mind would start creating, as the days would go on where we didn't talk, like you said, the glue, I would start inventing things in my head of what was going to play out and how that would look. And of course, it was usually miscommunication. It was usually misunderstandings. And then by the time we finally discussed it, it was almost laughable what we could have avoided.
Absolutely.
I mean, seriously.
Absolutely.
And I wouldn't eat. I'd feel sick. It was really, really awful. So it took us a while, honestly, years to learn that, because we weren't given the tools early on.
Correct.
Hopefully you guys are hearing this and putting these little tools in your toolbox of exactly what he said. Now, if there's any friction, it's always, I do love you, I'm upset, and I need to think about it, but always give a time frame of when you want to talk about it. Don't ever leave a person hanging, because then you kind of feel open-ended and floating, and you want to give some sort of closure to, okay, this is when we're going to talk about it, and this is when we're going to try and
Yeah, not only is that the right
this.
thing to do, but if you do leave somebody hanging like that, that can just go into their wounds of their baggage that
Yeah.
they, their parents or their previous relationship or whatever it might be. It's just like another stab, another wound, another remembrance of, oh, they're just like the trauma I went through earlier. Make it be different.
Yeah.
Do the right thing.
Yeah. So I'd say biggest takeaways when you say for newlywed life is talk about everything. Talk about
Lay
everything.
it on the table.
Do it early. Don't wait till it builds up. And
Get a mentor.
Get a mentor. Don't have a lot of expectations. You will, and don't. You're going to expect, well, gosh, we dated like this and we had so much fun, and now we're married and you never take me on a date, or whatever it is. I've said that many times in our younger lives. So, just communicate and tell your story, because as much as you think he knows you and she knows you, there's the deeper stuff that somehow when you're dating, you don't always get to.
No.
You don't always get to.
And when you're
then
living
they
under
show
the
up when
same
you're
roof, it
yeah, like
pops up.
how about even budgeting? Then you're talking about, how do we spend our money? I'm working all day. She has a job. We don't have kids yet, but yet now she doesn't work as much as I work. Where does our money go? She's out there spending, having fun. I mean, how are we going to attack bills? Are we going to do it together? Are we going to put money aside? All those things really need to be addressed, and they should be addressed early on so that you have a game plan,
So go out there, get yourself a mentor, and lay all your issues on the table and start talking about them. That's the bottom line. Huh.
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
unless.
Well, that was a short hop, folks. Thanks for joining us today. Please continue sending those questions in, because we enjoy listening to whatever is out there in your lives and addressing them, and hopefully getting you to a place that you can not have to deal with the ways that we had to deal with it. We kind of had to go through the mud, and it would be better off for you not to have to go to the mud, to know in advance, okay, here's the issues. This is how we can solve them. This works. Let's go this way.
Yeah, and don't be embarrassed by any of your questions. They're all valid. They're all things that you're feeling, things that you're going
Yep.
through, things that you've went through. And like he said, like Michael said, we've seen it all. We've gone through a ton. And, we'll never say your name on the podcast, on the flights, but we will address your questions and try and help you through navigating some situations to avoid trauma and stress, because there's enough of that coming at you just in daily life. You need to be a team. You and your spouse are a team. You're one now. And so now you've got to figure out the compromise to really start acting like that one unified team,
Absolutely. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.